Hey everybody, it's Stronghammer X back with a Path of Exile video today. I just wanted to quickly go over the build I've been playing for this league in Delirium with the Archmage infused Blade Blast. Now it's been a lot of fun so far. As you can see here, the tooltip DPS is like a nice cool 52k because Archmage is still OP, even in builds that cast quite frequently. And Blade Blast has been a lot of fun. Basically, the moment I picked it up, I was like, "Yep, this is what I'm doing." Even though I had at least like 3 different starter ideas. So as you can see, Bladefall leaves these nice little blades on the floor, and after a while they disappear. But after you quick succession cast Blade Blast, they explode, doing a lot of damage and clearing quite well. Now, like I said earlier, decided to scale this build with Archmage. So essentially, you could to scale your mana pool, and 6% of the unreserved maximum mana uh, goes to the mana cost of the skill, as well as the added lightning damage to the skill goes up based off of 124% of that cost, which will be a bit higher once I get this level 20. So thanks to things like Voidbringer, when I get it, Fevered Mind, uh, as well as the mana multipliers on all my skills being 130 to 140, the cost of my skill goes up quite substantially. So right now I have it about 1,077. Once I get a Fevered Mind and a few more mana nodes on the tree, that'll be closer to 2k, and which means about half a mana pool will be used every cast. But it being the auxiliary skill that actually submits my damage, you only need to cast it once because it repeats its damage the entire time. So, which makes it a nice smooth clearing skill despite its mana cost. Actually, if I go ahead and just run a quick map, I know my map is pretty sour right now, but that happens when you can only play a few hours a day. And even with Delirium content being as extra as it can be, you see, thanks to Cinder Swallow, thanks to a few other things, I clear pretty nice. So it's quite a comfortable playstyle. Non-Delirium maps are super easy. This thing crushes it with no issues whatsoever. Once the Delirium gets to its max up, ramp up, it gets a little sketch at times thanks to the tankiness of the build being a little low, but we can manage with some smart positioning as well as some maneuvering about the battlefield with Flame Bat. Oh, cool, the game crashed. Well, oh, that's what happens when Path of Exile's client decides it wants to be a happy fun time. Which means I have to restart everything, but that's okay. I can rest. Anyways, so moving on. So as I was mentioning, I'm scaling my Blade Blast through Archmage. I know Mathel did a video about this pretty recently with Inquisitor, basically converting all your damage into elemental damage, which you could still technically do with this if you wanted to, but it is totally not necessary. The only reason you would want to is so you can run physical reflect maps because you currently can't, uh, and because Archmage is Archmage, you definitely do not want to run elemental reflects. The only thing that my build is currently missing that my POB shows is a wand slash dagger that has physical damage as extra cold and some added fire damage just to get the trifecta of elemental ailments onto enemies, because with the crit chance I'm running, I should be able to freeze and ignite, which should help out Cinder Swallow refills to make the sustain even more smooth, as well as freeze and shattering mobs to help out with some more corpse destruction, even though it's pretty decent already. Now, as you can see, I am not running Cluster Jewel. I'm only running Cluster Jewel right now. I will have I am in the process of affording a larger cluster jewel tree, which will allow me to cut off a few points, but this is just a nice base tree for a mana stacking build. Thanks to Arcane Heroism and Arcane Capacitor and the nodes leading up to it, I am running a decent amount of Arcane Surge effect, which I believe caps out around 90, so it's almost like doubling Arcane Surge effect, so every single time you hit Arcane Cloak, despite the fact that it uses almost your entire mana pool, its effect is doubled. And as you can see here, getting essentially 40% more spell damage, as well as 2% mana regen added with your Mana Flask and Cinder Swallow Urn. Once you clear any pack, you're pretty much back at full mana, which allows you to have Arcane Surge while also being able to cast more Blade Blast, which makes the clearing speed decently fast, even though you are using almost all your mana pool all the time. That plus Blood Rage and Hierophant being Hierophant, thanks to Conviction of Power. Power charges allow me to have a decent amount of crit chance, as well as having endurance charges to help out with mitigation or Blood Rage, as well as extra life regen, which couples up with Versus Sword for extra life regen to make Blood Rage basically non-existent. Now, once I finish Uber Lab and everything, you'll see a few more points as noted here. You will see that I have a few things caught up over here. I will be anointing Arcane Capacitor so that I can run 2 crit medium cluster jewels, as well as a life and mana 1 to increase my damage even more. Just to increase my damage even more. That way I can have a reliable crit chance without having to run all these extra points, still getting all the life I can, thus making this a decently tanky character. Thanks to Mind Over Matter, the ES pool being close to 2,000 as well, plus the decent health pool I already have, I think my effective HP on here is around 71k, which once again, thanks to the ES pool, makes it closer to 9k. And this is also still not even completely all the way because as you'll see shortly with the item pool, I've had to do some fun things to my gear to make sure that the Blessed Jewels actually work properly. Precise Commander, as a Precise Retaliation isn't working yet. And if you're playing this build, you shouldn't be blocking pretty much at all. If you do, you'll do some more damage, but if you're doing it properly, you should be blocking very little. But as you can see, I basically started off just grabbing all the life nodes because you don't really need damage nodes early. Basically sprinting up to these spell damage and crit nodes over here, then going away to the shadow area just to grab the rest of the well-rounded out area, and then heading up to here so I can grab my cluster jewel of choice. And eventually I will want to have this with Thaumaphage as well, because the Energy Shield Leech should not be underestimated to help out with keeping your Energy Shield high, as Energy Shield being hit doesn't actually take damage from your mana, which again is another way to keep your mana staying pretty high. Now onto the actual gem links here. You will see that I am running Blade Blast with increased critical damage, as well as Control Destruction, Lightning Pen, Archmage, and Unleash. Now, as it is a physical damage skill, and I am converting nothing to lightning damage, I'm just having a bunch of flat added lightning damage thanks to Archmage. Lightning Pen is there just for the mana multiplier, but also it does help with a bit of damage thanks to the amount of lightning damage I have, but not as much as some of these other supports. Now, Unleash is a bit of a niche choice from me. I do realize that if I were to take Unleash and put like even efficacy on here, which is even not that great, or something like Elemental Focus or Conic Effect, you would see like 400k extra DPS. That seems insane. And yeah, sure, if I wanted to cast it once, doing a million shaper DPS or million boss DPS, sorry, Yeah, a million shaper DPS. You think, oh, that's pretty insane. Uh, and you'd be right, except that Unleash is actually busted when it comes to factoring in the repeats because you're talking with at 630k, 11% less is like 600k. You doing that times 3 plus your initial cast under a boss, you're doing over 2.4 million Shaper DPS before you factor in other repeats, which you will consistently hit at least 10 to 15 on any boss, provided that they aren't jumping around the battlefield the entire time you're playing. And that's without factoring in things like Volver's Fire, which does cap out your damage pretty high. I mean, doing 8 to 10 million cheaper DPS just because repeats hit all the guardians that you're facing is pretty insane. So something to keep in mind. Now, unlike some other people who are playing this comp, I'm not scaling Bladeful at all. It is literally just to help out the um. It is simply just to help out with casting Blade Blast, which is my main source of damage. However, Bladefall still clears a lot of trash mobs very reliably. It still does around like 300k DPS, which is enough to clear out most trash mobs. Just means that rares and anything stronger are not going to fall at all. But that's what you have Blade Blast for. I run it with Unleash, Spell Cascade just to get the maximum amount of blades out, as well as Intensify. Little note: if you are casting just a little note, if you are casting, you can actually put a second blade fall out, and it'll actually continue to chain. So how you time your blade fall and blade blast allows you to get a lot more damage out, which kind of is a nice cool spice of gameplay, which is extra fun for me. This also helps with clearing out slightly tougher packs that either get missed by initial cast of Blade Blast thanks to Delirium encounters popping monsters, or with tougher enemies that you want to hit with a second wave of Blade Blast without casting and using all of your mana. Arcane Cloak is the bread and butter of this skill, of this build, in terms of both damage output as well as defense, as adding on almost an extra 2 to 2400 health to your build is pretty insane, which makes every 4 seconds our effective health will jump up to almost 10k, which is nice. This, by the way, because it is 75% of damage from hits before anything else, this includes ES, life, and mana. So, if you're using it while you're regenerating energy shield, or if it's capped off, your energy shield stays up pretty reliably, especially from the flat energy shield you get from Voidbringer, as well as the recovery from Cinderfall, which doesn't hit your mana, which allows you to recover your mana, so that when you do get hit with a nice chunky ability and your energy shield goes away, you still have your health and mana pool to sustain through most encounters. And by the time anything else heavy gets hit, you hit your Arcane Cloak again, something else heavy hits you, you don't get hit by too much, and you're able to regenerate resources pretty well, thus making you reasonably tanky, unless you get hit by a bunch of mobs with no flasks up and no charges of Flame Dash up, and you get stuck. That's when the build starts to show its true form of your mechanics and positioning are way more important than your skill, than your character, because that's when you die. I don't have everything that I would. I don't have all the perfect things I want for my build, but as you can see, the only thing I'm really missing is just a bit of physical extra cold and some fire damage to add to spells. Everything, my wand is about as good as this. The only difference would be the different elemental types to help out with some extra sustain for Cinder Swallow and extra defense for Corpse Destruction and Freezing. Because I do crit pretty reliably thanks to Precise Commander. or precise retaliation. Sorry, I do have this ring simulating those right now, so my ring slots are actually filled with legitimate rings. So my health and mana total is actually higher than what it is in Yobi right now. Everything else is what I am wearing. I am wearing Rissa's Ward as my chest piece. It is not an amazing chest piece, however, for a nice budget of I think it was like 20-30 C for a 6 link. And I am using all of the charges, doubling their duration when I have basically no investment in charges at all is extremely nice, especially since I want to keep my endurance and power charges up for as long as possible, because frenzy charges will be up as long as I am moving, but endurance charges are up way less consistently, and having the 25 to 29 life gen per endurance charge is super juicy for extra sustain, especially with having blood rage up and 0 physical mitigation with the exception of a granite flask and the charges themselves, or the basalt flask and the charges themselves. um the next item I'm looking to get is the Light of Lunaris Spirit Shield. This will help out my damage significantly, but also giving me a decent amount of crit multi, but you can replace this with pretty much any really well rolled spell damage shield. You don't need this. It's just a nice little item to. It's easy to get some cold damage spells without having to fight crafting, but still, it's a solid, basically easy option to get. And the extra energy shield on it would be super lovely. Again, totally not necessary. I was actually running a tactician belt for a while, as I had pretty much all the stats required to get the resists and whatnot on my current character. However, I just realized that a good life belt with resist just was working better because I just get the resist there, and getting the crit from the notables is just way better than the 50% crit you're going to get from the belt. So eventually, a good rare option is just be better. Cinder Swallow is pretty much the Cinder Swallow and Voidbringer are pretty much the only requirements for this build, which does suck because Voidbringer are not that expensive. A well rolled one is, but you only need like 60%. 80% would be nice, but 60% more mana cost is good enough. Um, but Cinder Swallow is the only thing that I think is pretty much necessary for the in-game sustain of this build, uh, because you basically get to keep up your ES almost 100% of the time, which allows you just to not use mom, to not your mom not to go off when you think it's going to, allowing you to cast way more often, which means more time you spend killing, less you're getting hit. Now, before this, just running a nice movement speed flask is all you need. Everything else will work out on its own. With how much you're using Flame Dash, you don't need a movement flask. It's just quality of life at that point. Can run the build without Cinder Swallow. I did for the longest time. It's just a nice quality of life item that makes the build function pretty much perfectly. And then Fevered Mind is just a nice little extra thing to bump up your DPS to in-game level once you can afford it. Don't worry about it. It is not necessary to do any of the in-game content because honestly, you only need about 200k DPS on your Blade Blast, and getting up to this level is pretty much overkill, but I thought it would be fun to try. That being said, I think this is a fun league starter character. It didn't really require a whole lot, too much to get into. Thanks to Delirium and a lot of currency farming stuff, you are able to afford a lot of the stuff that I have on this build pretty quickly. But you could run this on a Tabula and not run a Restless War, and you would still be fine. Your ES pool would suffer, but that's the price of wearing a Tabula. Otherwise, I think this build is a nice, fun way to start off the league with even with a new skill. Hopefully, I will be able to get out a second build soon, because I am thinking of running an Ice Shot Ascendant, but also I am wanting to see how far I can push this character into the late game, because mid-tier maps are okay to run, but I want to see how they do in red tier and up, because that's when the map mods get super fun, and it'll be nice to see where I get there from there. Hopefully time allows me to get there. In any case, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys later. Right? Peace.